Gilgamesh, who saw all, who was the foundation of the land, who knew everything, and was wise in all matters. Those words come to us from the epic poem of Gilgamesh, written in 2100 BC in Sumeria. Hello, fellow world builder. Welcome to another episode of Just in Time Worlds. Today, I would like to discuss how to build mythology into your world. Before we get into it, please do like and subscribe. It really does help the channel grow. And if you'd like to connect, links to my website and social media handles in the description. Okay, let's get into it. I divide mythology into three broad categories: creation myths, epic poems and stories, and religious fables and morality tales. What I'm going to do in this video is discuss each of those categories and how to make a relevant artifact of that nature. And then at the end, I will discuss how to use mythology in your world. Okay, let's get into it. Creation myths. So the purpose of a creation myth is to explain what people believe and why they believe it about their own origin. So a good example of this is, for example, the Kalevala that comes to us from Finland, which has got a lady who gets pregnant and the land is born from eggshells, and it's a really exciting story. And if you want to check it out, there's an info card to a short about it that I made. But the purpose isn't to be realistic. A creation myth is almost never realistic, right? It's not meant to be. It's meant to be an explanation of how people feel about who they are. So when you're creating it, what you need to do is you start with who the people are that you're writing the creation myth for, and then you work backwards from there. So I'll explain by using an example. Way back in 2012, I, with a group of friends, created a live-action role-play world called Tiana. And in Tiana, we had a bird people race called the Beata, who had a very short lifespan. They lived for 30 years only. And they also believed in reincarnation. So when we were setting up their creation myth, those were the two big factors that we had to explain. Why did they live such a short time? How did they feel about it? And why did they believe in reincarnation? So what we did was we said, okay, what they believe is that the older races, the races with longer lifespans, were created first. And death became jealous about these races' long lifespans. So when it came time for the Beata, the youngest race, to be created, they ended up getting this very short lifespan of 30 years. But they were created by the darkness, the elemental force of darkness. And the darkness gave them a special gift to make up for their very short lifespan. And that special gift was many lives. So while they might have a short life, they have many to look forward to, and hence their belief in reincarnation. And that was the Beata's creation story, which you can read in full if you feel like it on the World Anvil site that I've created for Tiana, link down below. So the other thing with this myth was it was very different from the rest of our the rest of our species creation myth. And the reason why we could do that was because the Beata were all alone by themselves on a little island off the coast of the main theatre of action. So they were a pretty isolated people. And this you have to now consider very carefully, because what will happen in a region is people will trade. And as they trade, they don't just exchange goods. They exchange ideas. They exchange stories. They exchange culture. And their cultures will have impact on each other. And eventually their creation myth will be the same creation myth with just regional variations. So when you're creating a creation myth, what you have to think about is who are the people you're creating it for? Why do they believe what they believe? and how much impact has the rest of the region had on their creation myth? Is it the same creation myth, or are they completely separate from the rest of the region's creation myths? And that's creation myths. Moving on to epics, Gilgamesh, which I referenced in the opening scene, is the oldest known epic in the real world, in our world. Overly Sarcastic Productions does a great summary of it, and there's an info card if you want to go check out that video. When you're writing an epic poem for your world, what you have to consider is, why do you need the epic, right? What is the story you're trying to tell? And I'll again explain by means of Tiana. So we had a big bad guy who was a necromancer, the Undying King. Also, in our main kingdom, in our main theatre of action, necromancy was a forbidden art. So we needed a story explanation for why this was so. And that led to us writing the epic tale of the fishwife. And it was a very unoriginal story. Basically, a necromancer had overthrown the king and had taken the throne. The king's youngest son had been spirited away, and he was, brought up by a fishwife in a little seaside town. And when he was 16, he learned who he was. He returned to the capital and he retook his father's throne. Huzzah! But it explained the origin story of our main villain, and it explained why people hate necromancy, and it explained why necromancy was a forbidden art in Arnhem. And that was why the story existed. So in your world, when you're creating epics, you have to consider those kinds of elements. Like why are you doing this? What is the thing that you're explaining? You do not need to be original. Epics very rarely are original. Okay, they change in flavor. So your epic needs to be flavorsome. It needs to have elements unique to your world, unique to that story. But it doesn't need to be a unique story. In fact, it works better if it's a familiar story and people can focus just on the details that make it unique to your world. So when you're writing epics, don't worry about uniqueness of story. Make it as flavorsome as possible. And lastly, remember, an epic is a story. It needs to be entertaining before it brings the moral, which is different from the fable, where you need to hit people over the head with a moral. So let's talk about fables. The purpose of fables or religious homilies is to give moral instruction. So you basically beat people over the head with a moral tale. Yeah? Like, don't be lazy, don't be greedy, don't trust dodgy people. So, or you can put a slight twist on a fable. So I'm going to tell you about my favorite fable because of a twist. So this fable is a fairly common one. A scorpion comes up to a river and he sees a frog in the river. He says to the frog, "Little frog, won't you carry me across the river?" And the frog says, "No, because you'll sting me." And the scorpion says, "No, I won't do that. If I sting you, then, I'll drown with you. Why would I kill myself?" So the frog says, "Okay, sure, I'll give you a lift across the river." And so the frog takes the scorpion across the river. And in the middle of the river, the scorpion stings the frog. And the frog, as he's drowning and dying in the river, says, "Why did you do that? Now we will both die." And the scorpion says, "Because it was my nature." Yeah? That's the original story. And the morality there is very simple. Don't trust dodgy people. Like that, they will, by their very nature, end up betraying you. It's just the way they are. But there is an amazing twist on the story that comes from the world of Legend of the Five Rings. So it's the same story. Scorpion, river, rise, ask the frog for a ride. The frog gives him a ride and Scorpion stings the frog. And then as they're drowning, frog says to Scorpion, "Why did you do that? Now we will both drown." And the Scorpion says, "But little frog, I can swim." And that was actually the origin story of a clan of assassins that do the wrong thing for the right reason. So if you can put a twist like that on a fable, fantastic idea. Please do comment down below if you've come across other twists like that, I love me a good twisted fable. Okay, so a normal fable is a morality tale. Take the moral that you want to illustrate and highlight and just beat people over the head with it, and you got yourself a fable. Using animals, obviously, not people. That's the whole fable thing. Finally, let's talk about how to use mythology. Okay, so in using mythology, you can have characters that spout that kind of morality tale at the drop of a hat. And they're very relatable. They're not super likable unless you like people like that, but they're very relatable. We certainly all know people like that who will, tell these little fable stories to illustrate how you should be a moral person and yada, yada, yada. So you can have a character like that, which makes your character set a believable set. You can also have scholarly characters. The archaeological city of Troy was uncovered because of a scholar who believed that Homer had based the Iliad on real stories, right? So he followed some of the breadcrumbs from the Iliad as well as other archaeological findings, and he found Troy. So you can have a character that studies myths and uses that to, get into dangerous situations and does the whole Indiana Jones kind of style of character, which would be a very interesting character concept based around those mythologies. Of course, you can have myths being background for weapons, rituals, artifacts, all of those kinds of activities. And then myths can also be your basis for plays and poems and stories. And how you use those things in your world, you can check out my video on performing arts in world building and how to use it. And that is my story around myths and how to myth in world building. Please do comment down below about any specific epic poems you'd like me to cover, or any fables you'd like me to touch on, any twisted fables you've come across, and any other topic that you would like to comment on regarding world building. Thank you very much for listening, and I will see you next week for another episode of Just in Time Worlds.